to welcome everyone. Glad to hear you. For our music today, we'll have troubadour Doug Rich.
Oh, stop it. You know, in light of what has been happening in Ukraine, I thought it would be very appropriate that we sing a song about peace. If you know it, please join along. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Take peace, begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Perfect number for this time. For our invocation, we have Mike Johnson.
Good morning. I'll be praying within my Christian tradition. If that's something with which you identify, you're please welcome to join, and insofar as you're full and it fits for you. Almighty God, thank you so much for sending me to this podium right after that song. I experience it as a ratification of what you've put in my heart to pray to you this morning. God, we are small. We're so small, and we look at these gigantic things, and it makes us feel even more small. And we wonder what possible difference such small people can make in the presence of such gigantic problems. And yet you've situated us with one another, and you've put us into a community, and you've shown us that while we are small, we are not insignificant. And while we lack the levers to make Russia leave Ukraine, we have a lot of influence over each other. And we can lift each other up, and we can tear each other down, and we can make this valley better, we can make it worse. And God, we've gathered here as a group of people, endeavoring to build community around that which is true, that which is fair, that which is beneficial, and that which builds goodwill and better friendships instead of tearing down friendships and creating ill will. And God, in the service of those values, we approach you and we invoke your aid. And we ask that you would help us, as small as we are, to be mighty for and with one another, that while everything else would fall to the ground in pieces, that this place, because of how you've brought us together, would rise and build, grow, be a place of love in which people look out for each other and stand with and for one another. If there is to be peace on earth, God, let it begin with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mike. We have quite a heavy agenda today, so with that, I want to give plenty of time for our speaker and questions and whatnot. So if you have a guest at your table, just kind of raise your hand, and we'll welcome them all here. We're pleased to have you here, and thank you for coming. One of the less pleasant duties that the president of this club gets to do is to recognize losses that we've had. And this past week has been particularly unpleasant. We have lost a number of people. Louise Marble passed away. Louise was the wife of our past president, also the mother of Dick and Ken in that order. Trudy Reif also passed away. Trudy worked for me at the museum when I first came here, and she still spoke to me after that. But she passed away also. She is the wife of past President Keith Reif. Particularly sad was the loss of Parker Madsen, son of Larry Madsen. Quite unfortunate. Pass away. And finally, past president, also father of president, Bill Rich, passed away last Friday. His service at St. Paul's Tuesday, March 8th at 10 o'clock. I'd like to have a moment of silence. Have a moment of silence for all these. Thank you. Always difficult for families, so please keep them in your thoughts. On a more pleasant fortune, we have something coming up here very shortly. Thanks to our Ways and Means Committee, headed by Sarah Morgan, with the help of Nicole Madigan. We will have a little event called a Lobster Drive. This is something that actually came out of the Kelowna, British Columbia Club, and it's been something quite successful, and it will be 3 weeks from today, on March 24th. There's a sign-up sheet on your table, so if you'd like to sign up for it, it's $75, and it will be drive-through. You'll pick up, take home, and there's a graphic, a really great graphic about it, which fortunately is not up there now, but it's a little lobster driving a car, so it's lots of fun. So anyway, I hope you'll participate. It's open to everyone and anyone. Please feel free. There will be an option if you're not a fan of lobster, which is hard to believe, but it's totally possible. And so there will be an option also. But it's a little fundraising events which we do in the years opposite the auction. So that's coming up again on March 24th, and you'll hear a lot more about it next week. Want to sign up now? We'd appreciate that. Next announcement is we have a new member of our club's board. He happens to have a familiar name today because they have this family well represented at this particular club, and that's Cal Blethen, who is joining the Rotary board. Cal, the good thing is you only got 4 more months to put up with me leading it, so it'll be easy. Thank you. Welcome. Other thing to really encourage also is that our deadlines for our vocational scholarships and our academic scholarships are coming up. You know, anyone who's interested in applying, we're kind of slow on getting the applications in, which is, sometimes it's the way high school students work and college students, vocational students. We tend to wait for the last minute. There was a great joke in the paper this morning about a fellow who had his paper done long in advance, but he wasn't going to send it in until last minute before it was due by email, and then his Wi-Fi failed. So I think that's kind of what we all do sometimes. But please encourage that if you possibly can. I'd like to have good applicants for those programs. So again, vocational and academic. Deadlines for vocational is March 9th next week, as is academic, which is Friday. All right, and with those announcements, if I could call our President-elect Sherbrooke up, along with our district governor-elect, Carl Ruther, I'm sorry, Ruther, got it, okay. And at the same time, Aaron Ruff is going to be introduced as a new member, and if you'd like to kind of move toward the side here, you'll be ready to go then. Thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing me a moment. As was said, my name is Carl Reuter from the Leavenworth Rotary Club. I am the incoming district governor. I came today to present your incoming president-elect, new theme banner for next year. And you've probably all heard the theme, Imagine Rotary, and I can't, no pun intended, imagine a better theme. But sitting there, I realized there must have been budget cuts, because my banner is much smaller than the one that's back over here. I will take that up with the powers to be. But I wanted to say hello really fast and drop this off so that Rick is ready to go on July 1st. Also have a pin for you, Rick. Thank you for your time, John, and it's wonderful to see so many Rotarians in person rather than on the little Brady Bunch that we've all been used to now. So it's wonderful to see that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Rick, now with a new member.
Would like to say one thing about the new Rotary banner. Unfortunately, I can't explain it, but it was explained to me how design of the banner, and I can retrieve that. I'd like to share it with you. It's really inspiring to me. Jones' message, banner. We'll get to that. Today, my pleasure to introduce to Yakima Downtown Rotary, Aaron Ruff, right? Who, along with his wife Megan, currently lead the Salvation Army Yakima Valley Corps and are responsible for all Salvation Army responsibilities and services and programming in Yakima. Aaron was born in Spokane. He grew up in rural Deer Park. He graduated from Deer Park High School, then went on to Whitworth, where he got a degree in education, secondary music education, and then obtained a master's in education, also in secondary education, with an emphasis in conducting. So I don't know if that's in conducting a meeting or possibly music, but I suspect it's music. He then went on to Whitworth University, got his secondary. Then he got his, did I mention he got his master's in education? I may have skipped over that. So he was brought on after he graduated and got his master's. He became an associate professor at Whitworth in their master's teaching program, where he designed courses that would expose cohort members to a wide variety of technology tools used in educational settings. He then shifted to become a middle school band director, and then was elevated to high school band director, where he grew both programs quite well, and that was in the community of Ording, Washington. While there, he served as a goalkeeping coach, assistant boys soccer coach, and, this is news to me, e-sport coach advisor. I don't know if that's gaming, I guess. Is that right? Gaming, hopefully legally. Aaron and his wife Megan then decided to commit to full-time ministry and service through the Salvation Army as ordained ministers, as well as executive directors for Salvation Army programs and services wherever they were appointed. So their first appointment was to a faraway exotic post named Windward, Oahu, in Kanawai, say that right, Hawaii, where Aaron was a member of the local Rotary Club with a membership of 15. But it's kind of interesting. That small group of 15 was very productive. And I just learned today that Eric Silvers even had some contact with one of the members there in that club. He occasionally goes to Hawaii and apparently has made a connection there. So that's nice to hear. Let's see. 3 years after their posting in Hawaii, they were called to lead the operation in Yakima, where they oversee food security initiatives for families and children, an after-school program, summer day camp, youth mentoring services, homeless outreach, utility assistance, emergency disaster services, fundraising initiatives, and they were also serving as pastors for a congregation with ministries in 2 languages. So, apparently Aaron does have some free time after all that. And when he has that free time, he enjoys hiking and camping with his family. And by the way, I just found out his family consists of 3 girls, 6, 4, and 2, which means he's a busy guy. He's also a program chair for the Salvation Army's Western Territory Esports and Gaming Initiative. And finally, Aaron enjoys cooking, traveling, martial arts, and pretty much any form of coffee. And just reading off everything that he's responsible for and does in life, and 3 girls growing up, I have to think he's a highly caffeinated guy. So I'd like to present Aaron Ruff, our latest and newest Rotarian member.
Welcome, Aaron. Here's the plaque for your wall. The famous Blue Book, which has all the information about all our membership. Your badge, as you know, it's a red badge until you complete Rotary education, and then it becomes a blue. And then the most important thing is your license plate holder.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Pleasure.
Okay, and the events keep going. Tyler Schultz is somewhere here. Oh, right behind me. Will talk to us about Snow Day, ski and snow day.
Okay. Wow, it's been over 2 years since I've been up here. It's still scary. Anyway, every year, I'm talking to a lot of the new members now. Every year, we have this thing called the Rotary Ski Day. We're fortunate to own a cabin at Rimrock Lake that looks over the lake. It's absolutely beautiful. And so what we do is we have Sig from the Sport House. He takes all his demo skis up to the White Pass so the skiers can go ski on different skis and experiment and stuff. And then afterwards, we come back to our cabin, and Mike Cocaine is my chef, head chef extraordinaire. He is really good at cooking prime rib. And we're not talking about small pieces of prime rib. We're talking about big, thick pieces of prime rib. And so, Carolyn, why don't you start this? This is just a real quick 20-second video of what you'll see at our cabin and at White Pass. The good news is this year, there's absolutely no snow at the cabin, so I got all kinds of parking. The drive is a simple 45-minute anyway, all kinds of parking this year. And this year, I really want new members to come and join us because I've met some of my closest friends at events like this. It's hard to get to know people when you're sitting at these tables. So anyway, Charlie Robinson, he came to my event, I think about 2-3 years ago. So Charlie, did you have a good time? What do you have anything to say about our cabin?
You will never see me propelling myself down a mountainside on a couple of sticks. I'm sorry, that does not make sense. But this gathering is exactly my kind of thing. So I love the camaraderie, I love the food. It is awesome, and the committee that always puts this together is awesome. So make the time, put it on your calendar, I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Charlie. So anyway, you guys, you don't have to be skiers. Just come up and have a good time. You know, it's been a long time since we've had a good party at this Rotary Club. Eric's, at least 2 years ago, and it was a good party. Well, we're going to have a real fun one. It's March 18th, Friday, so make sure you sign up. Everybody pick up one of these because there's a lot of things on the table, and sign up. And my Rotarian, one more thing. We got this really big, cool fire pit. So I'm going to have a big-ass bonfire this time. And you know what we're going to do in this big-ass bonfire? We're going to take all these stupid masks and we're going to throw them in the bonfire. And if you've ever worn one of these N95 masks, it's like having an octopus stuck to your face. Anyway, Rotary Poppers, stand up and pop. We're going to have a party March 18th. Woo! Hope you have a good day. Anyway, thank you, and sign up, please. It's always a lot of fun.
It definitely is a lot of fun. I'm in Charlie's group about cold and skiing, but the party is great fun. And it looks like our past president, Jennifer, also needs instruction in popping. So, all right, look forward to March 18th. And we have none other than John Cooper as Sergeant at Arms.
You will notice, and for our guests, I have a tradition of dressing up. And at the last one, I came dressed as a woman, and we raised substantial money, so I'm very pleased to announce I will never come to a Rotary meeting again dressed like a woman.
Never say never.
Never say never, John says. Okay, so today we're going to do a celebration of March. Now, there's a great website. When you're doing the Sergeant at Arms, every once in a while we look at something and saying, what should I do for Sergeant at Arms? And there's a great website called National Today. And it shares all these traditional, obscure, and downright bizarre holidays and celebrations, day by day, month by month. So I thought we'd take a walk through March and see some of the things that are happening. Now, of course, this year there are the usual celebrations and holidays. There is Fat Tuesday, followed by Mardi Gras. St. Patty's Day is coming up. The NC2A March Madness, which begins March 15th. And ironically, the final four of the March Madness basketball tournaments are being held in the land of Mardi Gras in New Orleans this year. So, if you have ever been to an NC2A basketball playoff game, celebrated Mardi Gras in the Big Easy, or had too many Guinness beers on St. Patty's Day, pay $1. Now, you're probably wondering, what's happening today? What do we celebrate on March 3rd? Which of these is not a correct answer? Is it National If Pets Had Thumbs Day? Is it I Want to Dress as Good as Kevin Good Day? Toy Soldier Day? Or Alfred Hitchcock Day? Well, believe it or not, option number A, If Pets Had Thumbs Day. And pay $1 if you did not guess that. And if you dress as good as Kevin Good, pay $5. And I know Kevin's here, so pay up. All right, let's take a look at, randomly I chose, March 18th, the day after St. Patty's Day. Now, which of these is not celebrated on that day? Ha-ha. Forgive Mom and Dad Day, National Sloppy Joe Day, International Four-Way Test Day, or Awkward Moments Day. You know, in a way, that's a trick question, because every day is International Four-Way Test Day for Rotarians. So if you thought that was the answer, pay $1. All the other ones that you see there are celebrated on the 18th, except for me. I have a tendency to have many, many, many awkward moment days. All right, next up is which one of these is correct for March 22nd? There's only one of these that is correct, that is celebrated on that day. National Quilting Day, National Goof Off Day, National Promposal Day, National Old Stuff Day. Harry Hellison, that doesn't count you. Are you stumped? It's National Goof Off Day. Though I imagine there's a number of you who celebrate that day more often, more frequently. The other ones you see listed are actual days this month. I just gathered them all for that day. So you could do these things on certain days. You can find out on that website. Now, if you celebrate your birthday, the birthday of a significant other or insignificant other, child, grandchild, siblings, or you celebrate a wedding or divorce this month, pay $1 or $2. And if you celebrate all of these, we easily take Visa and MasterCard. Now, finally, while not in March, another important holiday to recognize. Ukraine's Independence Day is August 24th. Here's praying and hoping that the conflict will be peacefully resolved long before that date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I will say that I think the dress got more money, so keep that in mind. So for next time. We have a great program today, and here to introduce our program is Casey Core. I might add before he starts that on your table, there are a lot of articles that are out of the Yakima Herald Republic or Yakima Daily Republic or Yakima Morning Herald before they merged in 1968 that are all articles about Rotary and how the paper covers this particular organization and has since it started in 1919. So that's why all those papers are on your table. And I thought you might be interested in knowing that paper has a big role to play. And here's Casey.
Thank you, John. So I notice this microphone is going in and out, so I'll try to stay close. Our next speaker is Frank Blethen. Frank is publisher and CEO of the Seattle Times Company, which owns the Seattle Times newspaper, the Yakima Herald, and the Walla Walla Union Bulletin. All that is important, but Frank told me a few minutes ago that he's been a member of 3 different Rotary clubs. My association with the Seattle Times and the Blethens began in high school when I worked as a copy boy. After working for other newspapers, I returned to the Times as reporter and later editorial writer. So what does a publisher do? If newspapers are about afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted, a publisher protects journalists from interference and keeps the business afloat. I know firsthand that Frank is a courageous publisher. No newspaper is perfect. Errors get made, bias can creep into coverage, editors can be subject to groupthink or no-think. But that is not an argument against newspapers, it is an argument for standards, more voices, and as many news outlets as possible. As in Seattle with the Times newspaper, in our community, the Herald Republic faces severe financial challenges. I'm serving on a committee with several Rotarians and others on the Yakima Free Press Initiative. We're trying a new approach, a first in the nation, to fund specific public service journalism in English and in Spanish. Those are new positions to supplement the Herald staff. The goal is to save local journalism, make essential news accessible without a subscription to a larger audience, and to make local coverage better. I hope we succeed. Not because everything about the Herald is perfect. I gripe when I see flaws. But imagine Yakima without a newspaper, and you realize this is a much bigger issue than one about one company's financial difficulties. It's about bringing light to issues of our day. When our institutions stumble, when our valley needs to rally to an important cause, who will tell the people? So here to talk about the crisis in journalism in our nation and in Yakima is our next speaker. Please welcome Frank Blethen.
You know, Casey wrote a really nice blurb about me in your bulletin, and that was a very nice talk. For some reason, when he's an editorial writer and he disagreed with me, he wasn't so nice. And usually he was right. But, well, I really appreciate you inviting me to speak today. There's nothing I would rather talk about than the future of independent journalism in America and in Washington State, and in particularly today, Yakima. America's newspaper system is the foundation of and backbone of our 230-some-year-old experiment in democracy. It is the trusted local independent system which has nurtured healthy communities and national consensus for over 200 years, at least until now. Ballpark, half the communities across the country no longer have a local or an independent newspaper. Right here in Washington State, at least half of our cities are plagued by what we call ghost newspapers, controlled by out-of-state financial opportunists who have decimated news staffs, produce minimal, if any, meaningful local content. If we are to preserve our democracy, we must save our local independent free press system. A word about the creation of democracy and our local free press system. So our founding fathers understood that the democracy would not exist unless we had a knowledgeable citizenry. They understood the rich and the powerful knew the value of information, and they would control it and hoard it if left to their own devices. To address this, they created the foundation of this 235-year-old experiment in democracy, America's local free press and independent press system. They enshrined in their free press vision in the First Amendment in the U.S. Bill of Rights in 1791. Newspapers are the only business mentioned in and protected by the Constitution. We were never intended to become a bauble of Wall Street. Our founders also understood that the nascent free press system would require a neutral government subsidy and government protection. The neutral government subsidy they came up with was the creation of the first government office of the new federal government, the U.S. Post Office. And they paid Ben Franklin to be the postmaster and to be a publisher. This was their way to ensure that local news reporting, which was there would be local news reporting in all communities, and there'd always be affordable and ubiquitous distribution. On the protection side, they created the First Amendment, which really was a brilliant move when you consider they were actually protecting our new free press against them and their eventual replacements. They understood for the new democracy to grow and thrive that there also had to be populist literacy. So they doubled down on common schools, and by the mid-1800s, we were the world's most literate country. The critical state of our American local free press system today, both our democracy and our local free press system are in a very fragile state. And it's not surprising because they are codependent and have been for over 200 years. Simply put, our democracy will not survive if we don't save and restore our once vibrant local newspaper system. The weaker our system has become, the more social discord has increased, and the more societal fault lines have grown. On January 6 last year, we witnessed a heretofore unimaginable insurrection in our state's capital. Generations always have differences, but for the first time, certainly in my life, it is disturbing that young Americans today are questioning both our democracy and our economic system. So what are the key causes of this? There are many, but the three most damaging are the demise of the local free press system, absentee ownership and disinvestment. Facebook and Google, who have fostered social media dysfunction and monopolization of digital advertising. The loss of locally owned Main Street retail and other local businesses to absentee investors. I see some head nods out there. The loss of so much of our newspaper localism has been the key reason the national consensus has eroded and the civic stability has just decreased. So it's important to remember our founders' three key principles in any discussion about the local free press. Subsidize, protect, and local. Our nation has lost its way in these principles, and we will only get back on track by embracing and energizing them. The demise of our local free press system began in earnest in the 1970s when absentee investors began to replace local independent stewardships. At the time, their tool was the death tax, a confiscatory 70% death tax, which became their key to being able to acquire local family papers. Our business has always been very capital intensive, and local families were faced with being unable to pass on a viable enterprise on to their upcoming generations because of the death tax. Financially, the 1990s were the golden years for newspapers, but they were followed by the two most challenging decades in modern times. In 1995, Craigslist wiped out most of newspapers' lucrative classified advertising. In the decade of 2010, that became the era of digital advertising monopolization, ending the era of newspaper advertising being the primary funder of local journalism. From 2000 to 2020, industry ad revenue has dropped from $48.6 billion to $9.6 billion in 2020. That's an 81% drop, $39 billion. From 2000 to 2018, another 201 daily newspapers were shut down, not because they weren't viable, but because they had been milked to death by absentee owners. From 2008 to 2020, newsroom journalist jobs dropped 56%. We've lost 40,000 journalists just in that period. With more than half of our newspapers in Washington state now controlled by absentee investors, it should not be a surprise their papers have been downsized and disinvested to the point that we have mostly ghost newspapers in about half the state. Seattle, Yakima, and Walla Walla have not been immune to the loss of revenue and have had to make prudent cutbacks, but with every effort to maintain viable news staff. We are proud that each paper has news staff significantly larger than similar-sized newspapers in the state and around the country. For our three papers to survive, the family liquidated all of our valuable South Lake Union properties and invested in new technology to facilitate the transition to the inevitable digital first future. And we have not paid a dividend in 15 years. We doubled down on the innovation and became an industry leader in several critical areas. Community funding, this is really specific to the Seattle Times, but also things were brought to the other two papers. Community funding of public service journalism. We're the only newspaper who has brought it to scale in the entire country. Digital audience and subscription development, where we've become one of the leaders. Pension relief for family-owned newspapers, which saved about 25 newspapers around the country. We're developing neutral subsidies for newspapers, working with our delegation, and expanding public service content in all of our papers, or attempting to, as we will be doing in Yakima. The path back to local free press stability and a return to healthy local communities. And again, I start with subsidize, protect, and local. All three need rejuvenation and leadership. Congressional support and public awareness has increased, but we still need public awareness. It is shocking how few Americans really understand what has gone on with the free press and what jeopardy it is in. So, under the subsidy category, today we have two critical pieces of legislation in play which would go a long ways toward shoring up the system. The Local Journalism Sustainability Act, which is a 5-year tax credit based on newsroom size. Where it will really be important is stopping this flow of lost journalists every year. We have key Washington delegation members who are incredibly supportive. Congressman Newhouse is one of the co-sponsors of the bill in the House. Senator Cantwell in the Senate, Congresswoman Dalbeny and Senator Murray also have been very key players. The other piece of legislation is called the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act, which is a 4-year antitrust waiver for newspapers to negotiate with Facebook and Google to get paid for the content that they currently just steal from us. Under Protect, 2 critical pieces: big tech monopoly and social media reform. There are 2 separate initiatives going on in Congress right now. On the state track, it's being led by Senator Cantwell, and in the House track by Congresswoman Jayapal. Moving on, and in the Q&A, if people want more detail, I'm happy to stick around and give it. But under local, in 2019, Senator Murray, with excellent bipartisan support from our other members of our delegation, led the passage of the Family Newspaper Pension Relief Bill. This bill literally saved more than, as I said, a couple of dozen family papers around the country. And interesting, some very large ones, Seattle Times included, and Minneapolis, down to Bangor, Maine, New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it was a big deal. What is still needed? What is still needed is that permanent neutral subsidy for ownership. When you go back to the Founding Fathers, they understood that there had to be a government subsidy that was neutral if they were going to create a free press. End the big tech advertising monopoly, eliminate the death tax and family newspaper assets, tax deduction for gifts directly to newspapers for public service journalism, restrict future consolidation of local papers by absentee investors, and begin incenting new forms of local ownership to get them back in our local communities. So a few words about the Blethen family, local journalism and community service. My great-grandpa, Cal's great-great-grandpa, founded the Seattle Times in 1896. Alden grew up as an indentured servant in central rural Maine, and after his father died, his mother couldn't afford to support the family, and he grew up, that's when he grew up as an indentured servant. As a teenager, he worked in the woods during the summers. He eked out an education during the winters and eventually became the headmaster of the Little Blue School in central Maine. He migrated to Portland, Maine, where he's unsuccessfully tried his hand at practicing law before moving to what was then a Wild West town of Kansas City, where he published a newspaper and speculated in land. He made a ton of money, and he moved to Minneapolis, where he built the first fireproof newspaper building in America. And you may have guessed it by now, it burned down. And maybe that was a good thing, because we wouldn't be here, at least the Blethen family wouldn't be in Seattle and Washington State otherwise. He ended up moving to Seattle and borrowed some money from his wife's relatives, bought a small defunct printing operation, turned it into the Seattle Times right before the Alaskan gold rush, which actually is put him over the top. He was the working man's paper versus all the elite papers in town. There were about a half a dozen of them. And by the time the gold rush was out, he dominated the market. He died in 1915. His legacy is remarkable. His last will and testament made it clear his expectation for all future Blethen generations was to maintain the stewardship of the Seattle Times as a preeminent newspaper in Seattle and Washington State. He cared deeply about family, his community, and the public service of independent local journalism. This legacy has been embraced and enhanced on by 3 succeeding generations of the Blethen family, and in the next decade or so will pass fully to the family's 5th generation. The Seattle Times' 125 years of Blethen family stewardship makes us the second longest continuous single-family newspaper, it's hard for me to say, single-family stewardship of regional metros in the country. Only Atlanta has more years than we do. Seattle Times, Blethen Family, Washington State, and our newspaper acquisitions in the state. We never intended to acquire more papers, but we have stepped up twice, once to prevent an out-of-state sale and once to return the paper to in-state. In the first case, in 1971, my predecessor acquired the Walla Walla Union Bulletin to keep it from being sold to an out-of-stater. If we had not done so, there is no doubt in my mind that today Walla Walla would be a news desert. In 2022, it is the 50th anniversary of our family's stewardship of the Walla Walla Union Bulletin. In 1992, my generation seized on an opportunity to return in-state stewardship to the Herald Republic. The Robertson family had sold it to Hart Hanks in 1972. Hart Hanks out of Texas sold it to the Media News Group in 1986. Hart Hanks was one of the early acquirers and was reasonably good steward, but Media News was one of the worst, and just really undermined the Herald Republic. What they did with their massive disinvestment in news personnel and equipment was just unconscionable. They were actually operating at a 45% profit margin when we acquired it. Our family's 30-year of the 2020 is also our family's 30th year of stewardship of the Yakima Herald Republic. I even shocked myself when I pulled those numbers out. Of all our accomplishments at the Seattle Times, there is nothing my generation is more proud of than what we did to bring back in-state ownership to Yakima and Walla Walla, or keep it in Walla Walla, and invest heavily in staff, equipment, and great community journalism. As a result of our two Eastern Washington newspapers, there are 20-some Blethen family members in the 5th and 6th generation, including Cal and his family, who live in Yakima, Kennewick, and Walla Walla. These acquisitions made us a statewide family as opposed, I believe, to just a Seattle family. As publisher of the Union Bulletin, it was my privilege from 1974 to 1979 as publisher to rebuild the Union Bulletin and turn it into the best small newspaper in the Northwest, which is exactly what we did. As CEO of the Seattle Times, it was my privilege to oversee the purchase and then subsequent rebuilding of the Yakima Herald Republic. Knowing that if not for those efforts, Walla Walla would be, as I said earlier, would be a news desert today, and Yakima would be a ghost newspaper. The future of the Yakima Herald Republic is one of two things. It's either going to be a news desert or it's going to be a national model. The Herald Republic was profitable up to a couple of years ago, but has lost 60% of its ad revenue since 2015. In 2022, it'll be the third consecutive year the Blethen family will subsidize/invest in the Herald Republic to the tune of $1 million, covering the losses. We have taken all the prudent steps we can to reduce losses without decimating the newsroom. Yakima has a newsroom of 24 journalists, which is about 3 times larger than comparable sized newspapers around the country. Did I get my numbers right, Greg? Hopefully, most of you are by now familiar with the Yakima Herald Free Press campaign. Of course, Casey was just talking about it. It is a nationally unique and transformative new model if we're able to pull it off, which I believe we will be able to. It capitalizes on the evolution to a profitable digital future and on the goodwill and stewardship of the community. The new digital-first model will add 14 essential news journalists for a total of 38 journalists. Now, I got to tell you, at 38 journalists, they will be the second largest newsroom in Washington State behind Seattle. Redeploying current staff, we will redeploy current staff to expand investigative and enterprise reporting and beefing up local coverage. All essential news coverage will be free and not behind the paywall, and translated into Spanish. We'll also beef up El Sol and its free website. The model will take about 5 years to become self-sufficient as we nurture the development of digital subscription revenue. During that 5-year period, to fully fund all those positions, we need to raise between $750,000 and $1 million a year, after which we do believe we can achieve profitability. This is in addition to the $1 million Seattle Times has committed to every year. We're grateful to the initial community response and gratified by it, and to the significant partnership of Microsoft. Yakima Community Valley Foundation has also been a remarkable partner. As local investments in the community campaign increase, it'll give us credibility with national foundations and regional foundations, and then we'll begin a phase where we will be raising money from them. They're hungry for new models and success stories, so that should be an easy reach once we get our house in order. Our village, success will take a village, and our village in this endeavor is the Yakima community, the Yakima Foundation, Microsoft, and the Blethen family. Serving the Yakima Herald Republic and saving the Yakima Herald Republic and the Union Bulletin from out-of-state mercenaries and building them into high-quality community newspapers is one of our most proud accomplishments of my generation of the Blethen family. And we want to thank you for the 30 years you've let us be part of your community, and really looking forward to how much closer those ties should become when we finally have victory on our Yakima campaign. Thank you.
Take questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions as long as you guys will keep me up here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the percentages are still relatively low, but it's definitely the direction that the entire industry is going, because when you look at the different age cohorts, it's where they're going. In Seattle, I don't know. It's maybe. Well, let me back up. We are one of the handful. There's only about 5 or 6 of us, metro papers in the country, that has been able to grow digital subscription enough, which actually helps us preserve print distribution, to where subscription revenue now is our #1 revenue stream, and that's a big part of the future, and will be a big part of Yakima's success, will be the subscription revenue. So we resisted. Well, we invested in digital in 2013 and have become very sophisticated about how we measure how digital readers react to stories, what they engage with, how long they read the story, when they hit our paywall, what do they do? And we are, in terms of the paywall and metro papers, I think we're now #4 or #5 largest in the country. We're up to 81,000 paid digital subscriptions. But when you look at our total reach, we reach, and our largest audiences now are the 18 to 20, get the numbers right, 18 to 25-year-olds and 25 to 30, 39, I think, whatever those two cohorts starting at 20 are, which was even a little shocking to us that we were able to achieve that. But when we talk about total reach now, we're talking about people who get both print and digital, people who get digital only subscription, and people who have a print only subscription. So when you cum all that up, we're doing incredibly well with younger generations, and we're doing incredibly well overall. Now, it's not enough to offset the advertising losses, and that's going to have to come through antitrust action probably. So it's the actual percentages are fairly small, but they're growing fast. We refuse to jump into chasing digital stuff, even though we were becoming pretty sophisticated on the content they would read and marketing the content to them, because we didn't think the market was ready for it. But the market really is ready for it now, and it's as you watch these generations mature. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Just a question of clarification about how you're using the word subsidy and subsidize. Do you mean that in an active sense or in the passive sense of not taxing? So I'm the CEO of a local nonprofit, right? And as a nonprofit, there's taxes that we don't pay, right? We've not thought of that as a subsidy per se, right?
Right.
But so just as you're talking about free press, and its history of subsidization, can you be a little more, tell a little bit more about how you mean that word exactly?
Sure. I mean, the way the founding fathers meant it is, if they paid people like Ben Franklin to be postmasters, they had printing presses, and they should also be printing papers. So they, in effect, when they got paid as postmasters, that was subsidizing their salary, and then the function of the post office was then actually making sure it got distributed. So it was, they were literally subsidizing the printer's work and the distribution. And I'm not quite sure how. Now, when I talk about a neutral subsidy, what I'm really talking about is nonpartisan. It doesn't matter what the content is, which it was one of the brilliances of what they did. It didn't matter if you were a Federalist paper or whatever the other one that they were feuding with, and that's true today. It doesn't matter if you're a very conservative paper or you're a very liberal paper. The idea is, that when you go across the country with a system like that and individual communities, that subsidy kind of plays out. It doesn't favor one over the other. Did that help?
I think so.
Oh, that's a great question. Right now it's Charles, because he brought in Greg. Greg's doing a great job for us, and Charles has been a great asset in helping us, work on the future of Yakima. Good journalism attracts good journalists, and I think in a way, for all three of our papers, they have benefited mightily from how much disinvestment has gone on in journalism. And when I talk about those 30,000, 40,000 job losses over the last number of years, there are a lot of good journalists out there who are working for papers they don't respect, and they don't like because they are ghost newspapers, and they want to come. So Greg's been able to attract some really, really great people, and in Seattle, we're doing the same thing.
One more.
My prediction is the Sunday newspaper won't go away in Washington State until I'm long gone. I hope that's a long time. And that the daily paper, though, is going to be less frequent. And, and of course, we've got some multiple ways to deal with that. The facsimile, replica editions, which they're going to continue to exist, so you'll get something that looks exactly like the print. You can't quite put your fingers on it the same way. But it's a natural evolution. Sunday seems to be an anomaly in the sense that people really want to. They may not care about it on the weekday, but they really want to get their Sunday paper. So the key, what we focus on is we as a business, we got to make sure we capture those trends and aren't a dinosaur. On the other hand, it's one of the ways that we make sure we make some money. And the most expensive thing we do is newspaper carrier distribution. It's very printing and distributing the paper. I am willing to hang around in a corner for a while if anybody wants any more questions or to take issue.
Thank you very much, Frank, and I think you heard him say that he's more than welcome to, more than happy to stay around and listen, but that's very illuminating about this industry, which has been so important to us for all so long, and hopefully will continue. Next week, we have the Peruvian Chamber Group that's going to be performing at the Capitol, but they're also going to be here, followed by that. The next week, we have Myths of Work and Life Balance. I know we all could use that. And following that, the president of CWU. After our meeting today, we have a committee meeting with the Music Committee, which Charlie will not let me on. So, but other than that, I believe we are giving a book in your name, also Frank, to one of the community centers. It's on dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we're doing every week. And with that, we are adjourned, and you go forth and have fun. And read the paper.